and good evening. What's up? What's going down? Gravecrawler here. And today I wanted to present you a deck tech with a twist. And that is that after looking at the results from the Pro Tours in both Asia and North America, I noticed there was, I believe it was 5 heroes that had 0 representation at the tournament. And I kind of took that as a bit of a challenge or maybe inspiration for a new series or videos. And that was to just make a deck tech about the heroes that weren't getting any love in the meta right now. And just seeing what we can do with them. How much fun are they? How not very good are they? Just give a bit of analysis. So the first in that series is going to be a Linn deck tech. First and foremost, before we start, just wanted to give a big shout out to Lee from Tavern Brawlers. We've been bouncing ideas off of each other, and he's been a real big help for this list. So Lee, thank you very much for that. Really do appreciate it. But anyway, the hero Linn, Rogue Agent. Admittedly, I'm finding that the ability on this card I'm not using as often as I would like. The 10 health ability is sometimes happening and obviously is relevant because I'm diminishing 2 cards, which with Mill, I'm wanting this to be part of the primary strategy, well, secondary strategy. So that is coming into effect. But I'm finding the 31 I'm not using as much as I'd like because I'm not developing that many bounty counters in this list. But having 30 health is also really good because we want the game to go on longer, to allow us to mill more, to allow us to control the game. So it's a shame that I'm not using the ability as much as I'd like, but there we go. So first card that gave me a lot of inspiration behind this deck, and that is Resurging Fire. This is a 2-cost basic action that says target opponent discards 1 card. You may play up to 1 target card from their Oblivion this turn by paying its resource cost using resources of any color. This card's so cool. It's so interesting. So with Mill being a more primary strategy in this list, the selection that this card can get in the later game is fantastic. And obviously we can play threats and cards that we just normally don't have access to, and it is just really interesting, really cool. Love this card. One of the big inspirations behind this list. I'm only running 2 copies of it because you're effectively having to pay whatever the cost of the card is plus 2, so it really is, if say you're playing their bomb, which usually is like 5-6 plus, right? You're paying between 7, you're paying between 7 and whatever, you're paying 2 more, and I think that's really, it is a lot. So you only want to be really selective with the card, but it's felt good so far. Really like that one. So let's start then. Lava Blitz. It's a 3-cost, effectively discarding hand, drawing 5 cards. It's just a mill card, but also you can sometimes just, play a load of cards out quickly, replenish your hand. Maybe if your opponent isn't playing cards down at a quick rate themselves, maybe you can net more value out of it. But either way, it's kind of a pseudo milling tool. So really good. 4 copies of that in the deck. Death, 2/1. It's the 2-cost death. That it's a bit of portal control first and foremost, but also on the defeat, target contender loses 2 health, then that contender's controller draws 1 card. So I could do that on the opponent and make them lose 2 life and draw a card, or I could do it myself and draw a card if I needed to, but actually I'm considering it more for the opponent. And it's another kind of pseudo milling tool, and they're losing health. So also later on you'll see that synergizes with the Death Endbringer here. Shocking Revelation. I mean, anybody that watched the Pro Tour, the North American Pro Tour, will know that, I mean, Genesis is not only everywhere, but this card is I'm not going to use the word obnoxious, but the card is unbelievably good. And considering we're primarily blue in this deck, there's no way that this card doesn't make the list. 4 of as well. Being able to effectively wipe the board, it slows the game down. Potentially I've got some card draw from it as well. The card is fantastic. A top staple card. Speaking of top staple cards, Linn, Nanite Assassin. 1 cost, 2/2, trigger enter, target opponent, diminishes a card. It's a mill card. That's the reason why it's in, right? Well, kind of. Then you've got a bounty counter, which again has some relevance as we discussed a little bit before. But the important bit is probably the last bit, which is if one or more of your clash cards with a bounty counter were defeated this turn, you may put target clash card with an initial resource cost of 2 or less from any Oblivion into your clash zone. That ability is incredible. The fact that it's from anybody's Oblivion is great, but the stats on the body is fantastic. It's diminishing, which is part of the mill strategy. It's putting a bounty counter on, which can help with Linn's 30 ability. And the fact that I can resurrect another Linn, or I can resurrect, I guess, Lord Krung is another big target for the card. It's incredible. I can't really see many blue lists that wouldn't run this card regardless, but in this list especially, it is very, very good. The Clash buff that we've chosen, Augmented Reality. Again, speaking of fantastic cards, this is it, right? It's only playable if your contender is blue, which we are. Choose 1. Clash cards, target player controls gets +0/+2 until the end of the turn. Then that player draws 2 cards. Or Clash cards, target player controller gets -2, -0 until the end of the turn. That player diminishes 2 cards. I'm using it for the diminish end of things, but the versatility on this card's great. It only costs 1. It's versatile. It's doing what I want. It can give me cards in a pinch. It can diminish my opponent's cards if the mill strategy is paying off. Yeah, really, really fantastic. On to more milling cards. This card's worked really well. I appreciate Linn is not a top tier hero, but this card has really overperformed in my expectations so far. The fact that I can activate the portal on its own is already not a bad ability, but the fact that we're both diminishing every turn, it's feeding into my primary strategy. It's asking my opponent for a quick response in terms of the clash grinds, unless they want the milling to just keep going and keep going. But also it's giving me a target with Resurging Fire later on, and it's giving me a target in my for Linn as well. So this card, really, really good, really overperformed so far. Yeah, really, really cool. Now, Lord Krung, just a great staple card. As I said, you can resurrect it with Linn, and it can buff itself, importantly, if I'm playing multiple Lord Krungs. But the necrotic ability is what it's here for. It's just blocking, it's stalling out the game, but it can do a lot of work. And like I said, resurrection with the Linn, buffing each other. It's also a black resource as well. So yeah, all round fantastic card, this one. Linn, the Diminisher. Yeah, one of the newer additions with Genesis Returns. I'm trialing it. It's effectively mill 2, potentially bring it back to mill again. It's a chump blocker. It's fine. It's quite basic, but I quite liked it for just the purposes of the mill strategy, and I've not been overly impressed with it so far, but we shall see. Death Stalking Spectre. This was one that was actually recommended to me by Lee, that I hadn't really considered, but card's very good. It is a 5 cost with flight. The important thing being flight, so it's good for defense against other flight. And then you can enter sending a clash card with attack power of 3 or less to Oblivion, so we're controlling the board a bit with that. Yeah, card's very, very good. Really, really like this one. Only 2 copies of it in the main board, mainly because there was so much good stuff and fun stuff that I couldn't. Cuts had to be made somewhere, so I have included one in the sideboard in case there is some really threatening 3-power things that need to be answered very, very quickly, or if flying defense is a bigger deal. But for now, it's just 2 copies. Lord Krung. It is 1 copy only. It is the bound one. It is just a resource base. I guess you could say if you needed to play it, it would buff off the other Lord Krung, but no, it's just a resource. Haven. Phenomenal card. It's a 2-cost, 1/2, and then it says trigger enter. You may put 1 card from your hand into your resource zone engaged, so it's ramp. And then trigger defeat, return target non-trap accessory from your Oblivion to your hand. In this case, the only target for that is Cyber Optics, but pretty good in the sense that, you know, if street mills are optics, we can bring it back with the Haven. Same if someone sends it to Oblivion. The ramp is great. It's only 2 cost, and it's a chump blocker. So yeah, really, really decent card. Now, another one of the new additions with Genesis Returns. Diminished. So this is a 2-cost, 2 blue pip card. It says counter play. You may only activate this trap when an opponent plays a clash card. A target player diminishes X cards where X is equal to the initial resource cost of the clash card being played. Yeah, so you flip this over, pay 2, and they're milling its cost. Really fun, really cool. I think this is kind of like, to me, this shows the general weakness with mill, I think, is kind of, for me, encapsulated in this particular card. Because, man, if this just had a little sprinkling of interaction with the board state, like the creature got a bounty counter, or minus till the end of the turn, or some... It just needs that little push, I think, but it is also our biggest singular mill source in the deck if you're hitting higher cost creatures. So I've hit 6 costs and it feels very good milling your opponent for 6. Outside of street, I would say this is probably the next best value in terms of just raw mill. Card's really fun. And, you know, the fact that it's a trap, I am running another trap in the sideboard. Sorry, another 2 traps in the sideboard. And this could be a me thing. Tell me, anybody else, if this is incorrect to say, but I kind of like running multiple traps to keep my opponent guessing, because as long as I'm not diluting my strategy too much, I've noticed there's a power in like keeping your opponent guessing with the trap, whereas I find it odd when lists only have 1 trap in it, because if your opponent knows your deck in game 2, they know what to play around. Maybe they can't, or maybe that in itself is a power, but I don't know. I felt like having a second trap is kind of nice. But yeah, cards really cool, really interesting, really fun. Look, overall, mill is not fantastic. It is not a primary strategy, but this is a really cool card, and who knows, maybe one day it will be. Okay, what have we got next then? So we've got Death the Endbringer. Man, Death's so cool. So, I'm not going to lie, this card is like not completely synergistic with the deck. I really liked it thematically, which I know is like, what? In a deck tech based on theme? Yeah, look, right. But it's still a very powerful card. And the fact that you can bring back your Harbinger cards, and we do have some of those. So we have the low cost Death that we can bring back as well. But also it's controlling the board. So For me, the most important ability has read at the start of each opponent's turn, that opponent must send one clash card they control to Oblivion. That is a very good ability in the late game. It's a 4/5 body. We're only running 2 of them. I think the card's very, very good still. Definitely cuttable, but someone would have to explain to me what other high-end stuff they're bringing in. Speaking of cuttable high-end things, but are still really cool and I really want to play them, and their new shiny toys, that is Genesis the Inevitable. 5 cost, 6/5, undisputed, unrivaled, trigger defeat, put this card into your resource zone engaged. This card has each ability among all clash cards in play. It's just a strong stat card. Like, this is the thing for me, is that it's, I don't know whether, for me, the best defense is a good offense sometimes. The card's just flat good, isn't it? It's a kind of good stat card. Potentially, depending on what you and or your opponent have out, it could get some crazy different abilities. And the fact that it is on defeat going to my resource zone is never a bad thing either. So this again is probably cuttable in that it's not serving the mill strategy per se, but I still think it's just such a powerful card that I don't want to ignore it, and it's felt good so far. Then finally, for the main board, we've got Cyber Optics. We're running 2 copies of this. It is a 1 cost, attach 1, and whenever the attached clash card attacks, we're basically diminishing 1. Spoiler alert. We're just diminishing 1 on the attach. It's mill, it's cheap, it's something that can be retrieved with the Haven. Yeah, it's not been that great so far, in my opinion, but as I said, I really wanted to make mill a more primary strategy in the list, so it is here for that. And it's been fine. It's been fine. Anyway, onto the side deck. We've got Lefty's Last Stand. It's a 2 cost. Basically, it's preventing clash damage. Just really good if someone is hitting you for a large amount of damage for the stall. Really toyed with putting this in the main board, but it just didn't quite make the cut for me yet, but I could see an argument for it. Apex. Now, this is another one that Lee had suggested, and it's a great shout. It's flying defense. It's a solid card. Yeah, it's I've bought it in once so far, and yeah, it's felt fine. It's felt fine. It's basically for the flight defense is the main reason for me why it's there, and yeah, it's been serviceable. Linn's Battlescape. This card, it's mill. The bounty counters has some applicability sometimes, but isn't the main reason. I think for me at the moment, I'm gathering the more I play Alpha Clash, the more that Clash Ground control can be a really pivotal part of the game that I don't think I appreciated when I, my first couple of games. And as such, I think Linn's Battlescape makes it in just, it's kind of like, it may as well read just like counter Clash Ground. It's servicing a strategy for us as well, but it's mainly there to just counter their Clash Ground, so I bring it in that situation. Death, Stalking Spectre, I think we discussed this before. The fact that it's killing the 3 power or less is great, and it's also flying defense as well. Abyssal Doom. Admittedly, I haven't bought this one in yet. Now, in the comments, I'd love to know people's opinions on this card, but to me, I kind of like just the idea of a scalable removal based on your resources. Yeah, and we don't actually have too much removal. So I get a little scared sometimes of the idea that someone just plays a massive bomb and we don't have the direct answer. But maybe this is cut, but I haven't played quite enough to judge. I haven't played this card at all yet, but I haven't played deck enough. I like to get at least 15-ish games under my belt before I really start refining and changing lists, because I don't really like playing one game, ripping the deck apart, and keep going that way. And then finally, anyway, Moxie Sharpshooter. It is a 1-cost trap. It's basically killing something with 2 or less. Well, it's not power. It's cost 2 or less. Again, very early on in playing and looking at content for Alpha Clash, I noticed how fantastically powerful Sharpshooter Moxie is as a card. It is another trap, which, as I discussed before, just from a personal perspective, I really like the idea of multiple traps in a deck just to keep your opponent guessing. It's good for the removal of early threats that, we want to play a slower game. So removing those early threats, meaning we won't get aggroed out, is great. Also, another nice thing is it's killing a target that then Linn, the Nana Assassin, can bring back as well. So, yeah, I think the card's generically powerful. So, yeah. Anyway, that is the deck. I'd love to know what you guys think down in the comments below. It's been really fun playing it so far. Like I said, it's won games, but mainly through killing as opposed to milling. But we are getting people lower when it comes to the milling part of it. Resurging Fire, though, is still great for just being able to take their Oblivion and play it ourselves. Really, really enjoying that aspect. Yeah, if anybody has any suggestions for the list, please let me know. I'm very open to it. And also, just generally, do you guys like the idea of this series? I'm not going to pretend I'm the best Alpha Clash player in the world ever. That's why I kind of wanted to come at this from a different angle and taking heroes that are not played at all and just seeing what I can do with them. I just found as a really fun deck building puzzle, and that is something in Alpha Clash that I'm really, really enjoying. The deck building puzzle has been really fun so far. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below, and see you guys next time. Bye bye.